I'm excited. I'm also nervous. Honestly, when Iman first asked me if I wanted to be the face to this series, I was hesitant. This task to me was super daunting. Anyone who knows me personally knows that I have always been a perfectionist. I, like most business owners, had to learn how to take imperfect action and sacrifice perfection for the sake of getting things out there. But something like this, has always been different to me. See, I've been asked by hundreds, probably at this point thousands of people to make a program on sales, and I've always declined. Never thought I would actually do it. And it's because, to me, it has to be a story, a harmonious story. And I've spent well over $100,000 on education and sales. And every single time, every program, there's value and there's nuggets of information, but they're almost like small little books in a library, rather than chapters in a long story that is sales. And so for me to take on trying to tell that story, writing that book, that to me is incredibly nerve-wracking. And not nerve-wracking because I'm scared to teach sales. I've taught thousands of people the art of selling. I teach it every single day. But nervous about doing it in a structured curriculum, a program that has barriers, where I'm not speaking to you over a call, but through a camera. How do I take structured information and put it into a harmonious story? How do I talk through this lens to different people with different backgrounds and different experience levels in sales and make sure that every single one of you take value out of every lesson, finishing each lesson and thinking, wow, I learned something. And like I said, I was nervous, I was hesitant. When Iman offered it to me, I almost declined. My one stipulation was that for me to do this, he had to give me as much time and resources as possible for me to make this the best program in sales that anyone could get into. And now, after having taken hundreds of hours writing this curriculum and several months rewriting it and rewriting it and rewriting it, being in lesson 30 and realizing for that to be harmonious in the story, I had to plant a seed in lesson number 2, going through this program hundreds of times. I'm excited. I'm excited for you to experience it. I'm excited for you to go through it. And it's not because it's perfect by any means. This is an absolutely imperfect program, but it's the first time I've ever seen sales told the way it should be, as a story. See, it almost started like a hexagon, and I shaved it down into a octagon and then a decagon, and now it's an imperfect circle that flows just as sales does. It's like taking the science and psychology, but meshing it with the art and beauty into a book that I'm really happy to share with you guys, and that I'm personally proud of for writing. And so this series, this phase, this is the one I'm personally most excited for. Phase 3, this to me is the one where I'm excited for you to go through it. And it all starts today. In this first phase, we're gonna go over where we are in the sales process. Just like any good story, any plot, we have to give you background on the characters, background on the timeline that we're in, background on the situation. That's what this first phase is. Welcome to Sales 101, the crash course. Welcome to phase 3. Let's roll intro. Okay, so Crash Course 101, Intro to Sales. This is a must watch, whether you're brand new to sales or 10 years experienced. This is gonna be one of the most important videos of the phase, lessons of the phase, and that's because whether you're brand new or experienced, if you're brand new, you're gonna learn where we are in the sales process, what the format of a proper call looks like. We call that the frame of a call. If you're experienced, if you've been in sales for 10 years, we're gonna go over the fundamentals. We're gonna go over the basics. Everyone thinks that pros are pros because they can do the fancy stuff, and yeah, they can, but pros are pros because they nailed down the basics, the fundamentals. They can do the fundamentals extremely well and with extreme consistency. And on top of that, this is also the only lesson in this entire phase where we're gonna look at the sales process and sales call as a large picture. In the rest of this lesson, we're gonna get into the nitty-gritty, the micro. We're gonna get into lines and frameworks and how upward or downward inflection on tonality can change the entire meaning of a sentence. We're gonna get into some small stuff. But if you look at that as like the fine machinery that goes into an engine, it's really hard to understand how each piece plays a part unless you understand the engine as a whole. And that's what this lesson is for. So whether you're brand new or experienced, this is a big one. So just like we do on sales calls, first things first, we're gonna set the agenda. 3 things we're gonna cover today. Number 1 is the sales funnel. Number 2 is the goal of a sales call. And number 3 is the frame or the format of a sales call. Hitting the first on the docket, the sales funnel. You can get really complicated and in-depth with the sales funnel. But for the sake of this lesson, and for the sake really of anything you're ever gonna do in sales as a sales rep, we're gonna keep it simple. We're gonna zoom out and we're gonna look at 3 main stages. And the first stage, we'll call it the first touch. And the first phase is why marketing departments exist. trying to increase the amount of ways that a company can get inbound traffic and first touch from an inbound perspective, meaning people coming to the company, clicking on blog posts, clicking on YouTube channels, DMing in from email marketing. And on the other side of the first phase is also SDRs, doing outbound. See, a company doesn't always want to wait for people to come to them. A company also wants to outreach to people that may be affected by the problem that that company fixes. And so they have outbound departments. These are what SDRs do. And that could be DMing people on Instagram or cold calling or sending out cold emails, thousands of cold emails a day. That all happens inside of the first phase of the sales funnel, which we'll call first touch, the first time a prospect and company interact with each other. The easiest way to break down phase 2 is by giving you an example. So let's say that there is a business that helps people with fat loss. And on their site, they have blog posts. And these blog posts are written in a way through the marketing department that create strong SEO, search engine optimization for the company. So when someone Googles how to lose weight or anything about fat loss, these blog posts are hopefully the first things that pop up on Google. So this is first touch, correct? Now let's say the prospect clicks on a link, goes to that blog post, reads the blog post, likes what they see, likes what they hear, thinks that this company is something that resonates with them. And at the very end is a opt-in to email. This is still all phase 1. And so they opt into that email, and in the marketing email campaigns, they get an email that says, if you want to learn more, then reply to this email. And when they reply, they need someone to talk to them. And really what the company needs is someone to vet whether or not that prospect or that lead is someone that could actually benefit from the services that the company offers. And number 2, if they can actually afford it. It's called financial qualification. That's phase 2. It's dependent on how the prospect comes in. And so phase 1, that SEO, that blog post, that gaining of attention in the email in this case, into phase 2, which is someone actually conversating with that person. First touch was the prospect reading that blog post and then seeing that email and then replying to that email. That second phase is the SDR taking that information that came from the first touch, that prospect information, and turning it into something that's now called a sales conversation. And so this first part of the sales conversation, again, is called set and disqualify. And what that SDR is looking to do is find out if that prospect has a problem. In this case, in that fat loss offer, why is the prospect looking to lose weight? Is there anything coming up that's making the prospect want to lose weight sooner? Why are they looking to lose weight now? Why haven't they looked in the past? Is this something that they're really committed toward actually solving? Is this something that if an offer and solution is presented to them that they'd be willing to invest in themselves to actually solve? If they were willing to invest into themselves to solve that problem, what does that look like? And then getting into possibly financial qualification. That's phase 2. And what the SDR might find out on the phone is that that prospect isn't actually serious about losing weight. They were just reading late at night and thought, worth a good read. Or they might find out that they're serious about losing weight, but they're not in a place right now where they can actually invest in time or money to actually solve the problem. Or maybe they find out that that prospect is looking to lose weight. It's something they've been thinking about for a while. They have something coming up that they really don't want to look overweight for. And they're willing to invest their time into working out, and they're willing to invest money into the right solution to help them get there more effectively. And if that's the case, then we move that prospect into phase 3, which is called the sales call. Now to back up for a second, to zoom out, like I said, prospects can go from phase 1 to phase 3 without having to go to phase 2. They can kind of bypass it, if you will. And when that happens, it's because companies have ways in phase 1 of having first touch with prospects. And the reason for that is that in some cases of first touch in phase 1, there are methods of having a first touch with a prospect that companies know create higher quality prospects that are financially qualified and have more intent, if you will. That could be someone coming in from a direct response ad that fills out an application that shows the qualification and intent, in which case it could be almost more resistance to the process to have that stage 2 set and disqualify phase take place. Think about e-commerce for a second. In e-commerce, the goal is to have as little resistance in the buying process as possible, because every single little piece of resistance is something that someone could just see and say, I don't feel like actually doing this anymore. It's the same for the sales funnel. Throughout this entire process, the goal is to, yes, build intent and build the want to get to the sales call, but more than anything, to reduce the resistance that a prospect has to take from phase 1 to phase 3. Now in this harmonious story, we're actually hitting our first roadblock, because when I was making the curriculum, this is the first time I was challenged to make sure that You're not just getting bite-sized nugget pieces of information. See, we're catching ourselves in a catch-22 when we come to the goals of a sales call. And the reason for that is because the human brain does not like to think about a how without a why, but it also doesn't like to think about a why without a how. See, for you to really understand sales, you have to understand why we're doing what we're doing, but for you to understand why we're doing what we're doing, you have to understand how we approach that. When we talk about how we approach things, if you don't know why we're doing that, then you start to forget layers of the process and you don't understand it. And so the catch-22 is that I have to go over both of these subjects in a way that you start to understand both at the same time. And the easiest way to do that is by kind of approaching it like Christopher Nolan would, starting at the beginning of the story, which is also the end of the story, and then going through the story chronologically, but also backwards. Does it make sense? I don't think it makes sense because I don't think anything Christopher Nolan ever makes sense, but it also still does make sense. And so we're gonna rip it anyway. This is what's gonna happen, and we're gonna go through the why and the how several times on repeat throughout this lesson and throughout the rest of this series. And that's because every single one of those why and how discussions being a rep. Every repetition we go through, you're gonna start to understand a little more and a little more and a little more. Think of it like we're doing a two-step. And if you're new to dancing and you suck at dancing, when you start, you're just gonna be putting your feet and you have no idea why you're doing what you're doing. You're lost, your feet are just gonna be stepping on people's toes, right? But as you start to kind of get in the flow of it, you'll start to understand where to put your feet. That's what we're gonna be doing with the why and the how of the sales call. Now, the first part of this two-step is understanding the why or the goals of the sales call. Then we're gonna take the second step, which is understanding how we approach that, or the frame of the sales call. So hopping into the goals, there are really three main things that we're trying to accomplish on every single sales call. Number one is understanding exactly how you can help a prospect. Number two is dismantling objections that arise naturally on sales calls. And number three is making sure that you help the prospect make a decision, whether that is a yes or a no. All three of these goals are much easier said than done. They are simple, but not easy. Let's dive in. Number one, understanding exactly how we can help a prospect on the sales call. Now, let's dive back to phase one really quick, the first touch. And let's think to ourselves, why does that happen? If we go back to that first phase, that first touch, let's use that fat loss example. Why is someone looking at a blog post on how to lose weight? See, I don't personally look at blog posts or any kind of content on losing weight because I don't need to lose weight. And so my guess, and I'm sure you could agree with this, is that if someone is looking at something on how to lose weight, it's likely information that they're looking for on that subject, correct? I mean, it's pretty obvious. Now, number two is, if humans are looking at information, they tend not to look at information that isn't relevant to them. If you're not a rocket scientist, you probably don't look at how rockets and SpaceX create propulsion. And if you're not a musician, you're probably not doing research on the best guitar brands out there. And for me personally, I don't ever get into content creation. And so I'm not looking at DaVinci versus Final Cut and the differences between the two. See, people look for information that is relevant to them. And so if someone is looking at content that is information-based, then it's likely safe to assume that they're looking for information that is relevant to something that they're struggling with or need to know. And if they're looking for information, information is usually the stem or the foundation or the seed to taking some kind of action. Action to change the situation they're in, or to solve a problem, or to escape some kind of pain. See, people don't look to take action unless they're trying to change something. And that current situation we call the current state. And that feeling of discontentment we call pain. Which brings us to our first key principle, which is that any time in history or to ever come, a human being takes deliberate action, it is coming from a place of trying to extinguish pain. And that pain can be on any kind of scale, whether it's small, personal, human-to-human scale or large political. It could be someone trying to lose weight before summer because they're insecure about what their body looks like, and they want to be able to wear a swimsuit or bikini while having people not judge them. Or they want to get admiring looks when they're in it. It could be from a business level of a sales team not performing. And so revenue is down, and if revenue is down, then margins are down. And if margins are down, maybe that company can't make a critical hire that's gonna help increase another part of the business. And so they feel pain of lost revenue from the sales team inefficiency. It could be on a political scale, like going back into history and looking at the Revolutionary War between Great Britain and the United States of America. And the reason people make these changes and take deliberate action is because there is, on the other end of the change, the possibility of relief. If someone is looking to make a change and lose weight, it's because on the other end of putting in the work and making that action, there is a skinnier version of themselves, a better looking version of themselves that is relieved at the fact that they can wear a swimsuit in summer. If someone is breaking up with a girlfriend or boyfriend, it's because on the other end of it, there's relief and even hope of the possibility of finding someone who's better for them and a better relationship. If someone is changing in business, it's because at the other end of the change is the ability to possibly make more revenue or increase margins or spend less money to make the same amount of money that they're making. Just like we want to earn B2B versus B2C, there's always a desire or an outcome that someone's looking to achieve when they take action. And the desire is called the desired outcome or the desired state. A lot of people will refer to it as the future state. I legally don't think I'm allowed to actually refer to it as that. I'm pretty sure that's copyrighted, but if you hear future state, think desired outcome or desired state. What is the reason that they're trying to take change? What relief or goals are they looking for? Current state, desired state. And the fundamental understanding of people in a current state trying to reach a desired state by taking action, that's why people make change in their lives, and ultimately that's why people buy. And so the first goal in understanding exactly how we can help a prospect, it's actually a really nice goal because it's the only goal of the three that are aligned with what the prospect naturally wants. See, of the three goals, understanding how we can exactly help them, what that really means is building clarity on what their pain really looks like and what their desired outcome really looks like. And those two areas are what prospects really want to talk about. Prospects want to let go of their pain. Imagine for a second going to a therapist and having a pain that is bottled up deep inside of you that you've wanted to talk about with someone for a long time. When you get to the therapist's office and they say, "Why are you in here today?" You're just going to unleash that. That's what prospects do. Prospects want to externalize their pain. They don't want to hold it internally. And so a really good sales rep allows them to do that. And it's aligned with what the sales rep wants because it builds clarity on what that pain looks like. Good sales reps need to understand every single nuance of the pain. And they need to understand every single nuance of the desired outcome. And understanding or building clarity on those 2 points is not only going to help you understand how you can help that prospect, but it's also going to give you anchor points for the conversation. Imagine for a second, we take these 2 states, the current state and the desired state of a prospect, and we put a canyon between the two. Maybe there's a river at the bottom, you pick whatever you want, but there's a canyon that they need to cross. And imagine that instead of sales reps, we are building bridges. We are bridge builders. And let's say you have the best bridge. You are representing a bridge manufacturer and they build the top tier, never fall down bridges. The only thing you're responsible for is the anchor points on both sides. Let's take 2 reps. Rep number 1 builds clarity and understands exactly what the prospect looks like and exactly where they want to go on the other side of change. When they get to the other side of the bridge, what are they looking for? And to make sure these anchor points for your bridge are as strong as possible, you have to understand exactly where they're fitted on each side of the canyon. And in your responsibility of creating those anchor points, you have to know exactly where those anchor points go. You have to know what kind of dirt or soil you're putting them into. Or are you drilling them into rock? You see, the stronger those anchor points are founded into the ground, the less likely the bridge is to collapse. And in sales, that's exactly what we do. But the bridge is our offer or product or service. The anchor points are the clarity that we have on the prospect's current state and desired outcome. And so quickly, in this analogy, think to yourself, what happens if I don't build clarity? If I don't understand exactly what the prospect is going through right now in their current state, or if I don't really understand where they're trying to go on the other side of this change. If my anchor points aren't founded in bedrock, then my bridge collapses. It doesn't matter how structurally sound the bridge is or how great the offer is, or the product or the service. If I can't tie in to how it fits the prospect's current state and desired outcome. And so goal number 1 of every single sales call is building clarity on those 2 anchor points, understanding where they are and why they're there, and how long they've been there for, and how long they've felt the pain that they're feeling, what they've tried to do to relieve that pain before. And we want to understand on the other side what the other side looks like. What's the desired outcome? What's the goal? What happens when they reach the other side of the bridge? What does that allow them to do? Are there things on the other side of the bridge that they want to do that they can't because of the current state that they're in? See, the more that we understand those 2 anchor points, the more we understand how we can help the prospect. And the more we understand how we can help the prospect, the more likely we are to close the deal. So the first goal of every single sales call is having clarity on how we can help them, which really translates to having clarity on their current state and desired outcome and what those look like. But like I said, out of the 3 goals, goal number 1 is the only goal that aligns with what prospects naturally want. Because goals number 2 and 3 are directly related to change, which humans don't like. It's uncomfortable. And the reason it's uncomfortable is because human beings like patterns. Think about daily routines. When someone's in a daily routine, they feel good. When they're out of a daily routine, they feel anxious, sluggish, tired. And that's because a daily routine gives the human brain comfort in knowing what's to come. It has clarity on what to expect. Humans like patterns. The problem is that patterns will get you to the same result that they've always gotten you to before. And so to create change in someone's life or someone's business, you have to disrupt those patterns, which is uncomfortable. And humans will naturally do whatever it takes to stay away from uncomfort. And that is why goals 2 and 3 are less aligned with what prospects naturally want. Because by helping them, you're making them uncomfortable. But change is always on the other side of uncomfort. And so it's a necessary evil. The second goal, dismantling objections, is directly related to that. See, in its simplest term, an objection is a roadblock to change, to taking action. Because when people get close to considering making that pattern interrupt, the brain naturally freaks out. It releases adrenaline and cortisol, and it creates these feelings of anxiety. And what starts to happen is people start to try to ration or use logic to say why they shouldn't make that change. But rarely are these objections or roadblocks actually founded in any kind of logic. They're just the brain's natural response to avoid pattern interrupt. They're called fear-based or uncertainty-based objections. We'll get into this in phase 4. But as professional sales reps, we have to understand that goal 2 is dismantling objections, because every single time we get on a sales call, we are asking people to make a change in their lives or their businesses. And with that will naturally come objections or roadblocks. And as top-tier sales reps, we have to understand how to dismantle them, how to use logic to break down illogical fallacies, how to tell stories and analogies to get people out of what I call, or Steve Jobs called, reality distortion fields. Our last and final goal of every single sales call is helping prospects make a decision, which seems simple enough, but is actually quite tricky for most sales reps when they get started. And the reason that it's tricky is because humans by nature don't want to make decisions, especially life-changing ones. See, if you really think about it, humans don't want to take responsibility for the pain that they're in. If someone is overweight, they don't want to take responsibility for them being overweight. They don't want to say it's their fault. If someone's business isn't doing well, they don't want to admit that it's because of them. If someone is in any kind of pain, the first thing that a human naturally responds with is trying to divert the pain to something that is outside of their responsibility, outside of their control. And decisions go along with that pretty well. See, if someone says, yes, I want to do this, I want to take a change in my life, and they take a change, but they don't get to the desired outcome that they want, then it's their fault. Mentally, in their mind, it's their fault that they're not where they want to be, because they tried, but they failed. And if someone says, no, I don't want to make a change, then again, when they stay where they are, it's their fault, because they were given the opportunity to take a change and they rejected it. But the way humans think is that if they avoid or defer decision, and it's always there, able to be taken whenever they want, whenever it's convenient, then it's not their fault for where they are. In a weird way, the thing that comes most naturally to humans is also the most detrimental. It's deferment, it's procrastination, it's not taking responsibility. And so our third goal in a sales call is getting a decision to be made, whether that is a yes or a no. A yes is great. That means that they're going to be buying your service or product. That's amazing. They're taking change in their lives and responsibility for the fact that they can take a change in their lives. But a no is just as good, because it means that in 2, 3, 4, 5, 12 months, they're going to take responsibility for where they're at. And the cool thing about human beings is that once responsibility has been taken, once a decision has been made, and once someone internally realizes I am where I am because I declined help, human beings can't live with that, and change will be made. Really good closers, they get a yes or a no on the call because either eventually turns into a yes. The difference between top tier and rookie closers is a decision being made versus deferment or no decision being made. Because decisions being made, yes or no, lead to yes. It either leads to a yes on the call or it leads to a no that leads to a yes when responsibility is taken 3, 4, 5 months down the road. But a deferment is someone that hasn't taken responsibility for where they are at in life or their business yet. And a deferment is dangerous because procrastination can come in and people don't need to take responsibility. And when no responsibility is taken, then no change is made, which means they don't improve their situation, but you also don't get the sale. And so the third goal of every single sales call is a decision, whether that is a yes or a no. Both are equally as great. That is the why of everything that we do. Those 3 goals are why we do what we do on sales calls. Trying to understand how we can actually help people. dismantling objections before they occur, and framing for decisions and helping decisions be made on call. That is what we're going for on every single sales call, and that is why we do what we do, which leads us to topic number 3, which is how do we do that? Now, this entire series, this entire phase is laid out in a way where we're going to be going to each specific part of a sales call. But to give you a quick outline or a bird's eye view, there are 5 pieces to a sales call. And those 5 pieces are your intro, your discovery, your transition, your pitch, and your close. And those 5 pillars to the sales call is what this entire phase will be breaking down in specific, getting into the nuances. But for you to understand how they all come together, let's think about a sales call as a screenplay or a movie or a story, just like this training. The first phase, your intro phase, is the beginning of a movie. It's when viewers are introduced to the characters in the movie. And if you've seen good film, good directors and good actors, what they do is they try to instill the presence and the personality and the background of a character within the first minutes of you seeing them. The first impressions that you get from a character, that is your intro phase of a sales call. The second phase, your discovery phase of a sales call, is building the plot in any good film. It's when you get the background on the characters. What's the reason this movie exists? What's the actual plot? What's the thing you're watching for? Now that you know the characters, what's the tribulation that they go through? That is your discovery phase. The third phase, your transition, is the plot twist. It's when things don't go like you were expecting and things kind of take a sudden change. And the fourth phase, your pitch, is when the good guy comes out on top and conquers the villain. And the fifth phase is the finale, the final battle when it all happens, the close. And so throughout this entire phase, this series, we're going to be going into each of those parts of the screenplay and understanding how they feed into each other. How do we introduce the characters in the movie? How do we introduce yourself and build rapport and frame a call in a sales call? The second phase, the discovery phase, we'll be going into how we build plot, how we get background on characters, how we understand those anchor points, the current state, the future state, how we build a plot that is so strong that prospects want to keep moving forward throughout the sales call. The third phase, that transition phase, the plot twist, is how we get into problem transfers on sales calls and taking what a prospect thinks their problem is and actually showing them that it's something else and twisting the plot, showing them that what they thought was actually true might not be the case. The fourth phase, the pitch, when the hero gets back into the argument, gets back into the game. And the fifth phase, the close, the finale, when the hero conquers the villain and the plot comes to a conclusion. How we do that on a sales call, how we can close a prospect so that their problem is no longer a problem, so that we take their burden on with our service or our product. That will be how we go about this entire sales process, and that will be how we go throughout this entire phase, breaking down each part of that sales process so you understand how to be the best plot creator in sales, how to be the best plot twister in sales, how to create amazing screenplays on your sales calls, how to be the Christopher Nolan of your sales calls. See, like I said, science is very scientific and there's a lot of psychology in it, but it's also very artistic and harmonious and beautiful. And throughout this phase, we're going to be going over how those two mesh, specifically throughout those 5 phases. I'm excited to take you guys through this phase. I'm excited to show you how to write these screenplays, how to have sales calls that change people's lives, but don't feel like sales calls, that don't feel like selling. It's an art that we are going to perfect over the next modules of this phase. I will see you in the next one, but until then, happy hunting.